Hi and welcome back to the product design course. My name is Bhumika Indu. I'm a mechanical design engineer with 5 years of combined experience in automotive design and marketing. I have worked for various top-notch projects like Volvo, Jaguar and Land Rover, Tata Motors and NIO.
In this video, we are going to learn about prototyping. Once you have successfully completed the three phases of the design process, it is sure that the product will be created. It is no more a vague idea that can be scrapped out, but a defined vision that is ready to become a reality. At best, modifications will be made to the design and then a prototype will be created. Once a working prototype for the product has been created and tested to meet the basic requirements, the design engineering team starts the production planning and manufacturing process design so that the final form of the product can be realized. Advertisements at product launch are released highlighting on product features offering strong delight. The first step in converting your design into final product is prototype. By definition, a prototype is an early sample, model, or release of a product created to test a concept or a process. Prototypes are a crucial part of the design process and a practice used in all design principles. From architects, engineers, industrial designers, and even service designers, they make their prototype to test their design before investing in mass production. Although the engineers and developers try their best to minimize the differences between prototype and the actual product, but in general, a prototype may differ the actual product in terms of the material used, the machining process, appearance, etc. The material used for the final product is expensive and difficult to fabricate. So, a prototype is usually made up of material which is easy to fabricate but with the material whose properties are identical to that of the final product. In some cases, the material used for the final product is not even available. The difference in the material may change the appearance and finishing of the final product as compared to the prototype. Final products often are to be produced in large numbers, so the manufacturing process may differ, where the final product is often developed by some mass production method which is cost effective and time saving. This manufacturing process cannot be often used by the prototype as the material often is not the same. Moreover, the fabrication processes of final product might be complex, so the prototype is often produced using some simple technique. This also may lead to the difference in the appearance of the final product and the prototype. The quality inspection techniques of prototype and final product may differ too. The final product that is used to be sold in the market undergoes various quality inspection tests, whereas the physical prototype is not inspected in the same manner as the final product due to the differences in the material and the manufacturing techniques. There are 6 types of prototypes that can be used to validate an idea or concept as it progresses to its final form. When you are creating an original design or an invention, the first step of prototyping is to create a proof of concept. Exactly like its name, the proof of concept prototype is made only to display the concept of the product you're making. The prototype developed at this stage wouldn't be able to stand alone, and that is why we also call it a bench model. You'll need to explain every part of the prototype on how it's describing your concepts. This prototype doesn't need to show exactly how your product would look like or work like. It simply just has to represent the main structural features or the working mechanism of the product. This prototyping method can take many forms, including virtual test models, cardboard model, foam mockups, and custom built mechanisms. What variation you choose depends on what you need to test. This is a LEGO proof of concept of a differential gear application with a pair of wheels. The model is able to demonstrate the functionality of the differential gears, their construction, and the rotation of the wheels to be used in the actual product, which could be a vehicle. As you move forward with your project, you will find yourself looking back to refer to your proof of concept prototype. This will keep you aligned with your goals and assist you in configuring the core mechanism of your product. Depending on your project, we create a variety of bench model prototypes to test ergonomic form, features, de-risk complex mechanisms, evaluate technology, and get immediate user feedback. The input received are extremely valuable and can help accelerate product development and validate design direction. Here are some more examples of bench prototypes of revolutionary products by designers across the globe. Looks-like prototypes are also known as appearance or visual prototypes. They are constructed to give a physical representation of how the end product should look like. Looks-like prototypes should be able to illustrate the size, shape, and key features of the final product. They don't necessarily need to be able to mechanically move, much less function. Creating a looks-like prototype can be done with various materials based on your budget, time, and aesthetic target. You can make it simply by using cardboard or clay for a cheaper alternative or just as a starting point. Then if you want to create more sophisticated parts, you could construct your product with 3D printing. Larger models and models made out of metal can be prototyped using CNC machining processes such as milling, cutting, and drilling. We will learn about rapid prototyping techniques in our next video. For mechanical hardware products, material selection plays a huge role in prototyping process. Selecting the right material combination to give the required flexibility, strength, ductility, and manufacturing capabilities will be one of the most crucial steps. It is alright if you don't make it right the first time. It's normal for prototyping to take several iterations for a satisfactory outcome. Suppose you are doing a prototype of a design very similar to Baron Bruce tilt hydrometer. Prototyping the looks-like prototype will include the product structural design, making sure its size and shape fit on distilling chambers. Design should be able to be made internally to keep the parts inside steady and waterproof. Thus, the choice of material also play a huge role in constructing a looks-like prototype. A works-like prototype or functional prototype is a prototype that is made to demonstrate the workflow of the final product. Thus, it cares very little about the appearance of the product. This prototype will have to show the mechanism of the mechanical and electrical features, which means it needs to be constructed from several different parts. Dealing with an electrical works-like prototype will also require different factors. This involves the selection of different devices and components to create the system. Devices such as microcontroller boards, sensors, antennas, camera, or monitors should be adjusted according to your final product's target size, power requirements, working conditions, and budget. At this stage, you'll also need to decide which parts are going to be sourced from off-the-shelf components and which parts should be custom designed. Going back to our example of Baron-Bruce tilt hydrometer, configuring the works-like prototype will involve testing how the system could convey accurate data, such as temperature and pressure from the sensors to the user interface. At the same time, a floating mechanism to keep the device level should also be configured in the works-like prototype. The process will be a continuous iteration, hence you might start by using development boards and sensors before ending up with a custom-made module. A pre-production or alpha prototype is usually a single device made using rapid prototype techniques. The physical parts are 3D printed, CNC machined or cast using production intent geometry. Depending on the product, production processes may be needed to produce parts that cannot be rapidly prototyped due to material, manufacturing, or supplier complexities. For electronics, PCB boards are produced in low volume using production processes to evaluate and Daegu surface component assembly, systematic and layout. Custom firmware is ready for initial upload and testing procedures. This includes critical software features. Secondary features may be implemented later without issues. While the primary purpose is to validate the final production level product, this prototype may also be used for user testing, including clinical trials for medical devices. Take your time and examine these pre-production prototypes. They might not be polished like the final product that you see in the market, but they roughly look and function like them. The engineering prototype is the end product of the integration of a visual and functional prototype. An engineering prototype would be expected to look like your final product, except it's going to look more unfinished and the performance might not be as good. The process of creating an engineering prototype requires back and forth alterations. Continuous improvements should be taken to solve the problem. At times, you should compromise on functionality for the looks of the model or compromise the aesthetics of the product for the product's purpose. The engineering prototype you get at the end of the prototyping process can be used as your beta prototype, which is the prototype you show to the investors to showcase your project plan to gain more funding. The production prototype is the final prototype made before volume production begins. All components of the particular product are assembled using parts that are produced using mass production methodologies. The final assembled products are tested in line to ensure the proper functionality of critical features. Quite often, these first-of-the-line products are user-tested in the field under real-world applications. Select customers are chosen to give feedback regarding the product's functional effectiveness and reliability. While the product assembly process is evaluated and optimized during this phase using the quality control guidelines procedure, after this prototype is completed and tested, a new product is ready for mass production and market. The final prototypes look almost like the finished product without the label, surface polish, and handling information. It is not always necessary to create all 6 types of prototypes in your product design journey. Choosing the right prototyping method depends on your goals, funds, and resources available, and required testing procedure to validate your product. We will discuss 4 important areas where every product designer and entrepreneur needs to decide which prototype to proceed with. Goals or purposes for prototyping. To get a proof of concept prior to design implementation, you need to build a bench prototype. To demonstrate the final product look, material, and form, you need a visual prototype. To test and verify the fully functioning physical product, you need a functional prototype. To validate and verify the function, look, and production process of the device altogether, an alpha prototype has to be created. To showcase the product plan and gain investors and early customers, you should come up with an engineering prototype. And for final validation check before volume production of the product, you need to fabricate the final prototype with exact manufacturing procedures to be used in the final product. Now, coming to outsourcing or engagement between teams. Sharing your project plan and technical details with outsiders might create a risk of idea theft in case of innovative products. So it is best to present your physical prototype when you want to outsource any part of the product development process. The type of prototype will depend on what service you are looking for. In case of industrial design, suppose you want to have a beautiful outer covering for your product. You need to create a full-scale functional prototype with exact electrical and electronic devices that need to be present in the actual product, so that the industrial designer can get the idea about the inside volume and layout of the inner components for the outer covering to encompass all of it. For CAD modeling and virtual simulation services, you need to have an engineering prototype and the industrial design so that the exact dimensions of the parts, brackets, and fittings can be created as well as tested in a CAD package. For manufacturing teams to produce the parts, detailed CAD drawings are required for each part to be constructed, and the engineering prototype has to be present to help with the final assembly sequence. For marketing brochures and magazine articles, a visual prototype and highlight of the product's functions and material advantages is enough to attract interest of potential buyers. Nowadays, there is a trend of promoting a product's capabilities through short videos way before the finished product comes to the market. A bench model or functional model is enough for this purpose. You don't need to reveal the final look of your product in order to save any risk of being copied. For sales and product demos, you need at least an alpha prototype of the product so the potential customers can know what the product intends to do. Usually, at product launches, there are many people who want to try out the product. So, everything from the look to the functions, material, and the make of the product is looked at and criticized. So, it's advisable to put your best version, that is the final production prototype, at front. Now, finally, coming to the funding process. More often than not, product startups need funds to finalize their product's design and development process. So it is required to know what the investor is looking for and how to present it in order to secure funding as quickly as possible. Pre-seed funding is important for projects under the research phase. In this stage, the most important question is whether your idea is viable. So you need a proof of concept prototype to gain confidence from the early investors who also happen to become your mentors. Seed funding. At this point, you're seeking funds for marketing activities to attract attention towards your product. So you need either a visual prototype or a functional prototype, whichever represents your product goals. Reaching the Series A funding stage means that you have a complete product and you are ready for business. You need an alpha prototype in place for investors to help you in further developing your product, user testing, optimizing your business, and creating a scalable blueprint for growth. Series B. Startups in this stage have dedicated user bases and steady streams of revenue. So, an engineering prototype should have been created, tested, and been sold to a few industries or businesses. At this point, you've proven that your product can be mass produced, so investors can now help you set up a manufacturing unit. Series C funding is for a company well on its growth path and also often interested in expanding globally. Funds at this phase are used to start mass production of your product launch, reach new markets, and acquire firms to increase your organization's capabilities. You need a final production prototype prior to this. Now, different prototypes are also needed for different stages of product testing. In concept testing, a physical model is made to demonstrate the idea. So, proof of concept models allow people from different functional areas to see the idea, stimulate thoughts and discussion, and drive acceptance or rejection. Assembly and fit testing. This stage is about making some or all of the parts for an assembly, putting them together and seeing if they fit properly. At the gross level, this checks for design errors. And at the fine level, this is a matter of minor dimensional differences and tolerances. Obviously, any test involving tolerances need to use the actual manufacturing process or one which has similar tolerances. So, any engineering prototype or production prototype is required. Functional testing. Now, this stage is about seeing how a part or assembly will function when subjected to stresses representing what it will see in its actual application. Important attributes to know during this stage are chemical resistance, mechanical properties, electrical properties, thermal properties, and optical properties. So, a functional prototype is usually required. An alpha prototype can also be used when the outer cover is equally important in overall functioning of the product. Life testing. This stage is about testing properties that may change with time and that are important for a product to remain functional throughout its expected life. Life testing often involves subjecting the product to extreme conditions like temperature, humidity, voltage, UV, etc. to estimate in a shorter period of time how the product will react over its expected life. An appearance prototype created with exact material of the product needs to be created for this stage using rapid prototyping techniques. Regulatory testing. This testing stage is signified by a regulatory or standards organization or agency to assure parts are suitable for a particular use, such as medical, food service, or consumer application. We need to test the flammability properties, EMI, RFI properties, food rating, and biocompatibility of the product in this stage. We can simply perform these tests on the materials that we are going to use for the product unless the functioning of the product emits flammable gases or liquid that can harm the environment. In that case, the final production prototype needs to be tested. So that was all for now. In the next video, we will learn about rapid prototyping technique that you can use to quickly create a product's physical structure. Thanks for watching.